Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Bill Cook. I'm happy to be here and sharing this information with you today. What I'm going to share is specifically coming to us from acceptance and commitment therapy. So the actual strategy that I'm going to share is something that they teach in the psychotherapeutic program of ACT, but it's applicable to all sorts of life circumstances, not just for people who are struggling with worry and anxiety, but all sorts of other normal everyday life experiences that might sweep us away into some type of upset or reactivity. Just like there's what you might think of as outer weather, the storms that come to us environmentally, there is what you might think of as inner weather, inner storms. And just as the outer storms can sweep a boat that's out on the ocean or out on the water off course, or even crash it up against rocks, so too our inner storms have a strong tendency to sweep us up and carry us off course. Metaphorically, being off course with these inner storms amounts to not living our lives as effectively as we might otherwise. We react and we take ourselves away from our core values. We might indeed engage in a way that makes the circumstances worse rather than better. Just as the captain of that boat that's being swept up in the outer storms might drop anchor to provide himself and the boat some security and stability and some groundedness so that it doesn't get swept off course, so too can we drop anchor for ourselves, ground ourselves so we're not being swept away off course and living ineffectively. These inner storms that come up can be of a cognitive nature, our thought patterns. They can be of an emotional nature, our sense of reactivity, our anger, our frustration, impatience, judgments. So too our inner storms can be physical. So we might think of our inner storms as being cognitive, emotional, and physical in nature. And we can get caught up with these, give them so much of our attention that we're, metaphorically anyway, being swept away from living our lives in an effective way. To counter that, we can drop anchor, engage in a grounding practice that creates, if you'd like, a moment or a space in which we're not following the urges of our reactivity. In that moment of grounding, we create enough space, potentially, to allow us to make our wise choices about maintaining effective living. What are we going to do that's most important in the next moment, living from our core values? So the question might be, what is the most effective way to engage this choice point and to shift ourselves into a anchored or grounded state that allows us to continue to live effectively from our core values? What ancient wisdom and modern science are telling us is that our most effective anchoring or grounding tools are, first of all, our mindfulness. The simple acknowledgement that, I'm caught up in this storm, steps you out of the storm for a moment. And then specifically turning your attention to something that only happens in the present moment. And the most effective tool for that is some aspect of your body's experience. Feeling your feet on the floor or on the earth. Noticing the body gently moving or stretching in some way. Being attentive to the feeling of the breath in the body. Or perhaps turning attention to any one of the 5 senses as a bodily experience. And we continue to do that, attention to the body without judgment, and let the storm sort of rest in the background. And then we can purposefully engage in living our lives effectively by noticing what's important in this context for our action. This grounding practice is something that we don't want to do just when we're feeling swept up in the storm, because it's not going to be a very strong or effective muscle for us in that circumstance. This grounding practice, this anchoring practice, is something that would be very useful to make a habit of, so that we can do it frequently through the day as a way of living. In that way, it becomes a strong tool, a strong muscle for us when we actually do need it. So again, the invitation here would be to take a moment and just acknowledge, this is the way things are for me right now. Whatever that experience is, I'm really angry. I feel like lashing out or saying something harsh. We acknowledge it, and then we come into the body. Take a moment, feel ourselves in the body standing. Put our head where our feet are, and really feel the groundedness, the weight of the body. Be attentive to the breath. Noticing the flow of the breath in and out for just a moment. Creating that space where we're not reacting, where we're not following whatever the urge is, where we're not giving attention to the inner storm. Your attention is a form of energy. It's like putting gas in the car, it keeps it running. So if you give attention to the inner storm, you're fueling the storm, you're revving it up. Leaving it alone in the background, the storm will do what all storms do, eventually peter out. So you don't actually have to do anything to make your storm of anxiety peter out, for example. You just don't give it any more attention and turn to whatever the task is. Turn to your values. What's important for me in the context in which I find myself just now. The invitation is to practice over and over again throughout the day when you don't need it. Short little snippets, just stopping and noticing, oh, this is how it is for me right now. Come into the body for a few moments and then carry on with whatever the task of the moment is. And doing that frequently enough that it becomes a pattern that you can turn to as an inner resource when you actually do need it.